What can you tell us just about Robert Kaplan, now set to retire as Dallas's Fed president?
Yeah, well, this release just coming a few seconds ago. We've seen that the stock trading issues over at the Federal Reserve Banks of Boston and Dallas garnered a lot of attention with regards to Rob Kaplan. The Wall Street Journal originally reporting there were a number of multi-million-dollar transactions in stocks like Apple and also iShares floating bond rate ETFs. And we're just getting a statement from the Dallas Fed now that says Rob Kaplan will be retiring as the head of the bank effective October 8th. 2021. Again, we just heard from the Boston Fed earlier this morning that Eric Rosengren, their president, will be pulling forward his retirement from June 2022 to September 30th, which would be just this week. And I want to read you the excerpt of the statement that was released. Quote, "The Federal Reserve is approaching a critical point in our economic recovery as it deliberates the future path of monetary policy. Unfortunately, the recent focus on my financial disclosure risks becoming a distraction to the Federal Reserve's execution of that vital work." There was a statement from Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, who noted that he was grateful for Kaplan's 6 years of service. And then the statement that was included from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas's board of directors, noting that this decision was ultimately made, quote, "to eliminate any distractions to the Federal Reserve System surrounding his personal investment activities." Now, as far as going forward, we know that in the Boston Fed case, the COO will be stepping up in an acting basis before they try to find a new replacement for him. The same process will likely take place with regards to the Dallas Fed, at least for right now. The first vice president, Meredith Black, who is supposed to retire, will actually be serving as the interim president during the transition while the Dallas Fed board tries to find a new replacement. So two heads of the regional banks getting replaced today.
Brian, hindsight sometimes is a day late and a dollar short. Jay Powell talked about how this did not look good, these transactions that some of the bank presidents took part in during his press conference last week. How independent, though, are people like Mr. Kaplan and Mr. Rosengren, or does the chairman have the ability to push pressure on them to get out?
Well, as far as from a statutory standpoint, it's not as clear exactly what the Federal Reserve Board down in D.C. can do to remove a president at a Federal Reserve Bank. That's because some of this is a quasi government nature, because the Fed Board is a government agency. It's an independent one, but it is a government agency. But the 12 reserve banks scattered across the country are technically supposed to be semi-private. So the degree to which they can be removed by, say, for example, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is not necessarily as clear. The president hasn't necessarily been there, at least in recent memory. Now, however, that doesn't mean that there can't be some behind the scenes pressure. And one way that you can kind of gauge how it's possible the board could have been behind this was when you rewind to a few weeks back when the first stories came out from the Wall Street Journal, first on Kaplan and then Bloomberg on Rosengren, detailing their transactions. We saw joint, well, not necessarily joint, but statements from both the Dallas Fed and the Boston Fed that were released at the same time after market close that had nearly identical language. Again, that's not to say that they couldn't have came up with language similar themselves, but you do wonder to what degree maybe that was coordinated by somewhere higher than the boards themselves. But again, the process of finding a replacement will be done by the boards of each respective regional bank. It's not like Jerome Powell is going to pick the person who will replace them. So there is a little bit of autonomy, at least on that front. Of course, we'll have all those updates as we get them in the months to come.